If you're pouring your heart into your podcast, but still struggling to turn those listeners into paying clients, I've got something just for you. Imagine having a clear, simple plan to turn your listeners into buyers without relying on a huge audience or spending hours on social media. That's exactly what we'll create together in a podcast profit plan discovery call. During this free 20-minute call, I'll help you discover more opportunities for profit in your podcast and give you the next best step to turn your show into a client attracting machine. If I've got an offer that will help you expedite this process, then we can also discuss working together. Book your free podcast profit plan discovery call now by going to podcastingformoms.co/profit plan or by clicking the link in the show notes. I can't wait to chat with you. You don't need a massive following or a viral moment to grow your podcast. You just need a plan. In this episode, I'm walking you through the exact roadmap to attract your first 1,000 real listeners organically. The kind who actually binge your episodes and buy from you. Let's get into it. Welcome to Podcasting for Moms, the show for moms in business ready to start, grow, and scale a podcast that turns their listeners into buyers. I'm Jenny Sonneson, a podcast strategist and fellow mom entrepreneur. You're in the right place if you want to learn how to start and grow a podcast that attracts your ideal clients and really does the heavy lifting for you when it comes to selling your offers, all while balancing life as a busy mom. Are you ready to create a podcast that grows your income, impact, and influence? Let's make podcasting work for you because as moms, we know how to get things done. All right, let's jump into the episode. Hey, and welcome back to Podcasting for Moms, the show that helps you start, grow, and monetize your podcast in the margins of motherhood. I'm your host, Jenny Sonneson, a podcast strategist, mom of two, and your go-to guide for making your podcast work for your business, not the other way around. If you've ever looked at your download numbers and thought, when am I finally going to hit 1,000 listeners? Then this episode is for you. Today, we're breaking down exactly how to grow your podcast organically without ads, gimmicks, or spending hours on social media so that you can start building a loyal audience of the right listeners who actually convert into clients, students, or customers. Let's jump in, shall we? So first, let's start with a little mindset shift. Your first 1,000 listeners aren't just a vanity metric. They're the foundation of everything that comes next. So those first 1,000 downloads represent proof of concept. They show that people care about what you're creating, that your message resonates, and that your podcast is starting to build momentum. It's also a sweet spot where you start to see traction, people sharing your show, new listeners coming in through word of mouth, and consistent growth month over month. But here's what I want you to remember. It's not about getting 1,000 random listeners. It's about attracting the right 1,000 listeners, the ones who align with your values, binge your episodes, and eventually buy from you. So before you start promoting your podcast, I want you to make sure that your message is clear. I call this the podcast promise. What do your listeners get when they hit play? So I want you to ask yourself these questions. Who is my podcast really for? What problem am I helping them solve? And lastly, why should they listen to me specifically? If you can't answer those questions in one clear sentence, that's your first bit of homework. Because the clearer your message is, the easier it is for the right listeners to find you, and for existing ones to describe your show to others when they share it. So here's an example. Instead of saying, my show is a podcast for moms in business, you can try this. My podcast helps busy moms grow their online businesses in 20 hours a week or less. That kind of clarity helps you grow faster than any Instagram post ever will. So the second step here is to optimize your episodes for discoverability. So once your message is clear, it's time to make sure that people can actually find you. And this is where podcast SEO comes into play. And I promise it's a lot simpler than it sounds. So here are 3 quick wins to boost discoverability. So the first thing you want to do is use searchable keywords in your episode titles. So think about what your audience is typing into Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Instead of something like, let's talk about podcast growth, try something like how to grow your podcast organically in 2025. Then you want to optimize your show description. So make sure that it includes phrases that are relevant to your specific podcast. So for example, mine would include things like podcast growth, mom entrepreneur, podcast strategy for moms, things like that. Whatever aligns with your niche, make sure that those are included in your show description, because when people are searching, it'll pull up your show based on those criteria. And the third thing is to repurpose your episodes into blog posts or YouTube videos, or both. Because each platform you show up on is another door for listeners to find you. You're not just relying on the podcast app. You can get found via Google or, YouTube, which is owned by Google. So this allows you to maximize your visibility. And if you're here thinking, Jenny, I don't have time for that, I recommend just picking just one way to repurpose your episodes this month and commit to it. The third step is to promote strategically without burnout. So promotion, that is really the part that I find most often overwhelms busy moms. You don't need to post on 5 platforms every single time you release new. I'll have you know this. You do not need to post on 5 different platforms. I'll have you know this. You do not need to post on 5 different platforms every single time you release a new episode. What you do need is a simple, repeatable system. So here is my go-to approach. So you want to create one core promotional post for each new episode. Then you repurpose that into 3 to 5 smaller pieces. So a quote graphic, a story, a reel, an email teaser, whatever that may be. And then you want to schedule them across the week and move on. Remember, the goal here isn't to go viral. It's to just stay visible consistently. And my favorite underrated growth strategy, that's podcast guesting. Being a guest on other people's shows that share your audience puts you in front of warm, targeted listeners who are already in podcast listening mode, which means that they're much more likely to subscribe to your show as well. The fourth step here is to focus on listener experience. If you want listeners to stick around, you want to make their experience binge-worthy. So ask yourself these questions. Does my intro feel inviting or robotic? If you're feeling like it feels robotic, you might want to switch it up a bit. Another question to ask yourself is, am I giving listeners a reason to stay until the end? If you find that you're not giving people a reason to stay till the end, of course they're going to ghost. Of course they're going to fall off before the episode ends. So find a way to get them to stay to the end. Then ask yourself this question. Do I clearly tell them what to do next? Maybe you want them to join your email list, grab your freebie, or check out your membership. Are you doing that? And if not, it's time to start. The more you treat your podcast like a part of a larger ecosystem, not just a one-off episode, the more likely listeners are to take that next step to working with you. And that is how you turn casual listeners into loyal fans. Step number 5 is to leverage your email list. And here's the secret that so many podcasters miss. And we talked about this heavily in our last episode. So if you haven't listened to that episode yet, go check it out. I'll make sure to link in the show notes. But your email list and your podcast should work together. I want you to use your podcast to grow your email list and use your email list to grow your podcast. Send a weekly email featuring your newest episode and a quick takeaway. Add links to your latest episode and your welcome sequence. Mention your newsletter on your podcast. Because when someone joins your list, they're raising their hand and saying, I want to hear more from you. And that's where true connection and conversions happen. Lastly, we have step 6. Track what's working. So if you want to hit your first 1,000 listeners faster, you need to know what's actually working. So I want you to take a look at your analytics once a month, not every single day. And I want you to track the following. So you want to track which episodes get the most downloads, what topics that your audience is clearly loving, and where your traffic's coming from. I want you to double down on what works and don't be afraid to pivot if what you're doing isn't working. Organic growth takes consistency, not perfection. So there we have it. Your first 1,000 listeners aren't some far-off dream. They're the result of clear messaging, smart discoverability, simple, consistent promotion, a binge-worthy listener experience, and strategic integration with your email list. If you focus on these 5 steps, that growth will happen steadily and sustainably. And if you're ready for more support in building a podcast that grows your business, not your burnout, make sure to come join us inside the Moms Behind the Mic Society. It's my monthly membership for mom podcasters who want actual growth strategies, feedback, and a community that just gets it. You can join now by going to podcastingformoms.co/society. I'd love to see you inside. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you love this episode, take a second to follow the show and leave us a quick review. It helps more moms find this podcast and grow their own shows. Until next time, keep showing up, keep serving your people, and remember, your voice deserves to be heard. Thank you for tuning into Podcasting for Moms. I hope today's episode gave you the tools and inspiration you need to make your podcast work smarter, not harder. If you love what you heard, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. It means the world and helps other moms in business find the show. For more tips, resources, and support, head to podcastingformoms.co. Remember, you're not just building a podcast, you're building your legacy. Until next time, friends.